These are easily three of the best phones you could buy, with the brand new OnePlus 15 here, of course the Google Pixel 10 Pro, and the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. But the landscape has changed this year. In the past, you used to have these kind of notions that were always relatively true, like Samsung generally had some of the best displays, Pixels had the best cameras, OnePlus had the best specs, but things have kind of been jumbled up a little this year, and that got me wondering which is actually the best of these phones to buy. Almost a year ago, I compared the S25 Ultra to the best Pixel and the best OnePlus phone. Both of those are one generation old now, but with the brand new OnePlus 15 and the relatively new Pixel 10 Pro, I really want to see what the differences are. And so I think the way to do that is to compare these with 12 different categories. We'll talk about battery life, we'll talk about specs, camera performance, displays, design, everything that I think you need to know to make the decision, and at the end we'll add up the scores and see which one actually is the best phone overall. So I want to start off with the first category being the pricing. OnePlus definitely wins this one. The OnePlus 15 starts at $899, but a little caveat with that, that's only the black colorway, but with that, you are getting 256 gigs of storage. Now, if you want the other two colorways, there's like a sandstone one, I'll talk more about those later, but you get double the storage, extra RAM, and it starts at $999. So kind of two different starting prices there. Then you have the Pixel 10 Pro. Two starting prices with this as well. It's $999 for this smaller one, which is my personal favorite, or what I'm going to be using in this video is the larger one, just to kind of match the sizes here, which is $1199 for the Google Pixel 10 Pro XL. And the two phones are basically the same, except the larger one has a larger battery, has more RAM, and more storage to start with. And then, of course, the S25 Ultra comes in third place here because it is so expensive. This starts at $1299, which is by far the most expensive on this table, and it still has just 256 gigs of storage for that price. So for price category, OnePlus is a clear winner. And OnePlus also comes with a charger in the box and a pre-installed screen protector. Big win for OnePlus there. As always, by the way, these sometimes go on sales, so I'll have links in the description down below. Buying through those links costs you nothing and helps to support the channel, and I appreciate your support. And depending on where you are, those links may give you some perks. I think Samsung might have like an enhanced trade-in credit, maybe a student discount as well. The OnePlus link in some regions gives you a free gift, such as like watch or earbuds, again, depending on which country you live in. Also, I should have mentioned this earlier, this video is not sponsored. No brands had any input on any of this. The S25 Ultra is on loan to me from Samsung, the Pixel 10 Pro is on loan to me from Google, and the OnePlus was sent to me ahead of launch so I could make this video because I'm publishing it on launch day. This, of course, has no impact on my opinions. I don't owe anything to any of these brands. Moving on to category number 2, the design. I have to say, they're all a little bit safe, a little bit boring. OnePlus is the only one that even looks remotely different year over year. Like if you look at the S24 or S23 Ultra, kind of the same look. Same thing with the Pixels. Pixel 9 Pro looked almost identical to this one, but that being said, let's look at how these designs actually work, because they are pretty solid designs, even though they are a little bit on the boring side. We have more of a boxy design on the S25 Ultra. When you hold it, it does dig into your hand a little bit because you have such a sharp edge in that corner. The other two are definitely a lot more round, although the Pixel 10 Pro definitely feels the heaviest, partially because, well, it is heavier, and also because you have a lot of weight higher up, so it feels like it wants to tilt forward in your hand, which gives you more of an illusion of being even heavier yet. The Pixel 10 Pro does have some advantages though. It's the only one in this table that has Qi 2 magnetic wireless charging without needing a case to do that. So you could just set this on like a MagSafe stand, and personally, I think that is a huge thing. I don't know why other Android phones haven't adopted that yet. At least with the Sandstone one here, it does have kind of a interesting texture on the back, and I did try putting this on a MagSafe charger. If you get it at the right angle, you can get enough friction and it can kind of stop itself on the camera bump, and it kind of works, but it's not actually magnetic, so you can't use this in a car or anything like that. As far as wobbling goes, if you ever just set the phone down and use it on your table, you're going to have a lot of wobble with the S25 Ultra, the most wobble on the OnePlus 15, and absolutely zero wobble on the Pixel because we have that camera bar across the top. The Pixel 10 Pro also has a major advantage of coming in two different sizes, so if you have smaller hands or smaller pockets, or maybe you just like the best tech in a small form factor, you can buy the Pixel 10 Pro, not XL, and get a much smaller phone. The Pixel and the Samsung also have glass on the back, whereas OnePlus sometimes has glass on the back. It has glass on the matte black version, has fiberglass on the Sandstorm one, and a different texture on the violet one as well. So that's kind of an advantage that you have different options on how your phone feels or looks. And I guess we should mention the aesthetics now. These, like I said, are all fairly safe, a little bit boring. I'll let you comment down below and let me know which you think looks the best. They all look pretty good in my opinion. The OnePlus 15 does have some big advantages in terms of water durability. So you have IP66, IP68, IP69, and IP69K. And I know you might think like, it's just a spectrum, why wouldn't you just get the highest rating? Each one is technically different, so 68 is going to be for like submerging it, IP69 is for like spraying water at it, IP69K is like hot water jets being sprayed at it. So I mean, I think it could run through like a dishwasher. As far as water goes, you should be much safer with the OnePlus 15, but I've been using the other phones, taking underwater videos and stuff for about a year now, and they're both functioning just fine. They both have IP68 water resistance. In my opinion, the OnePlus does have the best haptics, so a little vibration motor in there. It is really responsive and it's pretty good. Let's switch over to some advantages of the Samsung. We have, of course, the S Pen in here. It's a downgraded S Pen compared to the previous year, meaning it doesn't have Bluetooth, but it is still the S Pen, a fantastic feature to have for writing notes, signing documents, or just like navigating through your phone. There's a lot you could do with the S Pen, and I really like having it in there. Also, the OnePlus phone has an interesting advantage of having an extra button on the side. This used to be the slider, the alert slider. I'm really sad they got rid of that. Now, just like the iPhone did, it has this little button over there. It has a really similar animation to the iPhone as well, so you can change it to like switching between modes or opening the camera, whatever, exactly like the iPhone has with their button. Also, this screen protector, honestly, before I even film the B-roll, I might just peel it off. It's a soft screen protector, so it gets scratches quite easily. But again, it's kind of nice that your phone comes with it, so when you order a screen protector, you don't have to worry about scratching your screen in the 2 or 3 days before that even arrives. Now, this is really subjective in terms of design, but I would say in first place, I have to say for design, the Pixel for the lack of wobble, the 2 size options, and the magnetic charging. Second place, I have to give it to the OnePlus here for their enhanced water resistance and the multiple texture options, plus that extra button on the side. And in third place, I still love the S25 Ultra, and I promise it's gonna shine later in some other categories, but it's off to a rough start in this video. But before we get into the camera test, I wanna wrap up the design with category number 3 being the displays. OnePlus had a pretty big upgrade this year, now with a 165 Hz display, so the other two are 120 Hz, but for what it's worth, I think most people may never notice that unless you're playing a lot of games or really pushing it to its limits like that. And in those situations, that could be really huge. Otherwise, like I said, 120 Hz on the other two. As far as resolution goes, they're basically all the same resolution. There's not a huge difference there. As far as the sizes go, the OnePlus 15 is 6.78 inches. You could probably round that off to 6.8 inches. The Pixel is also 6.8 inches, unless you get the smaller one, that's 6.3. And then the Samsung phone is the largest of the three at 6.9 inches. But as you can see here, basically the same display size on all of them. Another really important aspect in my opinion is the lack of reflection, specifically on the Samsung S25 Ultra. This is a fantastic feature that others try to copy by getting screen protectors that are anti-reflective, but they always make your phone look dim and they kind of change the colors. Samsung really nailed it here by making it built into the actual display. This is not a screen protector. It just rejects reflection really, really well, as you can see right here. The other two have a lot more reflections, and that means that they have to be brighter when you're working in a light environment. Also, just sitting right here, studio lights, completely muted on the S25 Ultra. That's a huge win for Samsung. As far as colors go, they all have fantastic color, but I think OnePlus does seem to be a little bit easier on the eyes. The OnePlus 15 also appears to have the thinnest bezels. If you look all the way around, they're absolutely tiny. These are all flat displays on all three of these, so none of them have that waterfall edge. But again, thin bezels, I think go a long way here. As far as brightness goes, I know there's like, you can look at the numbers and brightness is kind of a weird subjective thing. Everyone likes to just look at how bright it gets at max brightness, but it's not always max brightness across the whole display. So I want to take more of a subjective approach to this. And based on my experience, the Pixel appears to get the brightest, then the OnePlus is not far behind, and then Samsung seems to be a little bit behind them, partially because of the anti-reflective display, does seem to be limiting the brightness a little bit. But you have the advantage of not having reflections, so you don't need to be quite as bright. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, something that I think a lot of people kind of overlook, which I would argue is even more important than being brightest, is being the dimmest. So if you're using this in bed, or your alarm goes off in the morning, you look at a really bright phone, that's a pretty unpleasant experience. So Samsung has an extra dim mode, and they're able to get the dimmest out of all three of these. Then OnePlus also gets quite dim, and the Pixel doesn't get nearly as dim as the other two. At the dimmest setting though, sometimes the Samsung phone has a little bit of a grain going on, kind of a grainy look to it. I've kind of gotten used to that, and some models don't even really have it, but many people do experience the same thing when you go to the dimmest setting on there. The S25 Ultra also has another advantage when you're watching media, playing games, and that is that you have more usable real estate with less cutoff in the corners. So by not having these rounded corners, because keep in mind everything that's filmed or produced is going to have like square corners on it, this is going to be a little bit more true without cutting out those corners. The OnePlus has been getting some pretty incredible display ratings though, and like I said, does have a very high peak brightness. So my rating for the displays, I'm gonna have to say it's a tie in first place. It depends on what you prefer. Samsung for their dimmer nighttime display, their lack of reflection, and the less cut out corners. And I'm gonna say that's tied in first place with the OnePlus, which has an excellent display, great display ratings, ultra thin bezels, 165 Hz, and a very, very bright display. And then the Pixel, it's a really solid display with great colors and definitely the brightest in my opinion out of these three. I don't think it deserves to be called third place here, so I'm just gonna call it second place for our scorecard. Moving on to category number 4, let's talk about the cameras and the photos they can capture.
So let's start off the photo test with one of my favorites. The telephoto lens on all of these does an excellent job. OnePlus is only 3.5x while the others are 5x, but I zoomed them all into 5x for these shots. And you can see they all look really good. One of the main reasons I would even get a flagship phone, OnePlus, I think looks the best here because for landscape shots, it's a little bit more saturated, which kind of makes that tree pop a little bit more. It looks really nice, but looking at the natural color, so just look at the road, for example, the S25 Ultra does look the most natural. Looking at this shot, Pixel kind of missed focus on this one, so I don't know how it would look if I actually tapped and focused. None of these were tapped to focus, by the way. Samsung has a little bit of distortion in the background on the leaves that are blurred out, kind of like a weird distorted blur. And again, OnePlus, although it looks really, really good here, and for this style shot may look the best, is definitely a little bit oversaturated. I think that the Pixel is a little bit, it's very, very contrasty there. You can see really dark blacks in the bush, for example, but otherwise these all look quite nice. And I really like the overall appearance of that telephoto lens on all three of these. But going to the primary rear lens, again, you'll see some differences in the color of the wall here. This time Samsung was a little bit oversaturated. One thing the Pixel always does well though is white balance. And you can see again, white balance is nailed here, but Pixel missed focus on this one again. Samsung was a little bit more saturated this time, and interestingly, the OnePlus I think actually did the best job there. In an environment with a lot of colors though, the oversaturation of the OnePlus may be a bad thing, whereas Pixel has a nice, sharp, realistic appearance in this one. And again, looking at a chessboard where you have a lot of contrast, I think Pixel really nails this one. Samsung flattens it a little bit, and OnePlus does have a very brown, oversaturated look. Again, going back outside, looking at the sky this time in the dynamic range, they all did a really good job. I'd say OnePlus has the most detail in the sky, at least from what I'm seeing in this photo right here, and they also lifted the shadows pretty nicely on the ground. But again, Pixel does have very natural looking colors, although you may prefer the darker shadows of the S25 Ultra. Going to the ultra-wide lens, the Pixel doesn't seem to be as ultra-wide as the OnePlus or the Samsung. And of course, the macro mode on all of these, I think, is a really cool feature that OnePlus probably does the best here. I think that they have like the sharpest image and also really cool distortion that's kind of intentional of a macro mode at an off angle like this. So for this category, which is going to be the best? Well, if you really take a lot of landscape photos and you want the most vibrant, colorful photos, OnePlus is definitely going to be your choice. I really want more natural colors though, so I tend to prefer something that is very consistent, very reliable, not going to be bad in any situation, and the S25 Ultra has to be my choice here. Second place, I think the white balance is just so good on the Pixel that I have to go with that, even though it missed focus a couple times. And then the OnePlus 15, for me personally, is in third place here, just because it tends to be a little bit oversaturated. But like I said, if that's what you like, it's pretty great. So for the front-facing portrait mode here, you can see these all do a very different job. I think OnePlus is my winner here for two reasons. One, because of course it has a really good outline. It doesn't look too sharp around my hair like the Pixel just completely missed in my opinion. It looks really bad. OnePlus, the color is very accurate on the sky as well as on my jacket. Samsung kind of oversaturated my jacket and made the sky a weird light blue that it really doesn't need to be. And then, like I said, Pixel just really was a miss on this one. And although skin tones look pretty decent on all of them, OnePlus nailed it. Moving to the rear lens, a pretty poorly framed shot, but looking at the 1X rear lens, again, Pixel did a lot of sharpening around my hair. I don't really like the way that is. Samsung and OnePlus did a much better job, but I think OnePlus kind of hits it best with the skin color in this one. And now the telephoto portrait mode, I think that the colors look obviously very different here. OnePlus absolutely nails it here. They also have a further zoom, so you're using, I think, 3.5 to 5x, while the other two are like between 2 and 3.5x. So a little bit less zoomed in, which means less of a natural bokeh and a little bit more distortion on the others compared to OnePlus. Also, the Pixel is a little bit more washed out here, a little bit more desaturated, while the Samsung is a little bit too warm. And I think, again, OnePlus kind of nails it on their telephoto portrait mode. And then just a regular front-facing shot, not portrait mode. You can see the OnePlus does the best job, in my opinion, of capturing all the details of the tree behind me, while Samsung really blew out the highlights there. Also, the color of my jacket looks very accurate on the OnePlus, as well as on the Pixel 10 Pro. Samsung also made it a little bit blue here. And then lastly, a really high dynamic range shot. This is where the OnePlus definitely struggled. The Pixel did the best job with their computational photography, so that's a big win for Pixel. But overall, for this section, I'm going to say OnePlus has to win this one. They did such a good job. Big improvement over last year. Then I'm going to say the S25 Ultra. And then Pixel just really wasn't doing it with their portrait mode, especially with my hair. It's really over sharpening up there. And then lastly, we have a low light photo. OnePlus didn't really pick up as many details, but it's kind of nice they kept the image a little darker, whereas Samsung made it look like daylight, and the Pixel added kind of a greenish hue on there. But I think my preference for this one, very subjective here, but I'm going to say the S25 Ultra is my favorite, then the OnePlus, then the Pixel 10 Pro. Next, we have a social media test using the Instagram camera, and although Samsung claims to be really optimized, I think the Pixel actually did a better job, while the OnePlus kind of struggled here.
All right, that's a lot of talk about the cameras. Let's move on to the speakers, right? If you're gonna watch some media, play games, maybe you're not using headphones, how do these all perform? In the past, it used to be pretty stratified, different volumes and different, bass and treble. Now, these all sound really quite similar, actually. So I would say that they're similar enough based on my testing, but based on my testing, I would say it's not really a deciding factor between these. I would say this is a tie across all of them. Category number 10, though, is definitely not a tie. This is the speed of these. Now, speed could mean a couple different things, but of course the processor, the chip on the inside, has to be the most important part of speed. And the OnePlus 15 has the brand new Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 chip, which is top of the line for Android phones. Great speed, a lot of upgrades on this chip. And OnePlus also added their own 50% faster dedicated Wi-Fi chip, so you should be getting really fast Wi-Fi in here, and some other things under the hood that should make it a really fast phone. Like, that's what OnePlus has always been known for, just loading up the specs on the inside to give you the snappiest phone. They have a very light UI on here so that, going around, animations are pretty minimal. It really feels quite snappy, and then playing games, exporting videos, anything like that is going to perform exceptionally well on the OnePlus 15. Essentially, probably, I would say, the best right now on the market in terms of performance for that kind of stuff. But Samsung has the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy is what they're calling it. So it's not the Gen 5, it's not the newest one, but it is kind of customized for Samsung. And from my testing, like if you're just opening apps side by side, the speed is quite similar on those. It's perhaps a little bit different when you're pushing it to its limits for gaming. But when you're doing that, thermals matter quite a bit as well, which again, OnePlus upgraded their thermals this year. But again, for everyday use, I would kind of say this is almost a tie, but I do have to give OnePlus the win on this one because technically it is going to be faster. The Pixel is definitely firmly in third place here with the Tensor G5. There's been improvements with the Tensor G5 over the previous generations, and if you're doing some more AI-related stuff, a lot of Gemini stuff, opening Google-related apps, it's definitely really fast, but if you're playing games or really pushing it to export videos and do different things that are not optimized by Google for this chip, then you're gonna notice it's certainly a lot slower. Category number 11. Man, this is gonna be a huge win for OnePlus. I'll explain why. So this is the battery. Now, OnePlus wins with no contest here, partially because they're the only phone on this table that's using the silicon carbide batteries. I think I said that right. And the phone, they used it last year, right? In the OnePlus 13, which They skipped 14. This is 15. That was a great battery last year. It's essentially getting about 20% better energy density. So same weight, same size, but a lot more capacity in the battery. This year, they moved it even further at 7,300 milliamp hours, which is like 50% bigger than the other two batteries on this table. The Pixel has 5,200 for the larger one and 4,870 for the smaller Pixel 10 Pro. And then the S25 Ultra, despite having the largest display, has just 5,000 milliamp hours. Now, of course, chips matter a lot, so that should last a little bit longer than the Pixel, again, depending on what you're doing with these phones, but I mean, pretty easy ranking for the battery life between these three phones. And honestly, I've experienced it using these phones quite heavily side by side for this testing, like camera tests, video tests, stuff like that. They're draining very much. Like OnePlus 15 is losing the least battery. I'd say second place is firmly the Galaxy S25 Ultra, and in third place is the Pixel 10 Pro. And a really important part of battery is, of course, going to be charging, and this is another big win for OnePlus. So Samsung and the Pixel both charge at about 45 watts, and they have decent wireless charging, but nowhere near what you're getting on the OnePlus. So the OnePlus, you're able to charge up to, well, they say 80, but it could even be 100-watt charging if you get the right charging brick with this. And on top of that, you have incredibly fast wireless charging. Like the wireless charging on the OnePlus is faster than the wired charging on the other two phones. So recharging, even though it's a large battery, is still going to be incredibly fast on OnePlus. And then, of course, our final, but probably our most important category, the features on these phones. They're all running Android, so they can get a lot of the same apps, but the manufacturers kind of give their own special features on each of these phones. And I think we need to start off, of course, with the Google Pixel 10 Pro. Now, it's a very minimal stock Android experience, but Google hides their own features in a very useful and invisible way, right? Like when you're on a phone call, the features are there. They're not always noisy and cluttered, but for one, you have the whole Google Call suite, which they continue to improve. Of course, you've got call screening, you have Hold for Me, Call Notes is a fairly new one, and a lot of other kind of really impressive assistant features on the phone. You also have Gemini Advanced for 1 year when you're using a Pixel. That just kind of comes with it, which is nice. You have Add Me, so if you're taking photos, you can take like a group photo and then give the camera to someone else, and then you go in the photo, which I've actually used that so much. I know there's a lot of like AI kind of gimmicky features in cameras, across the board. Everyone's doing it. Apple's doing it, Samsung, Google. But Add Me is actually a really useful feature in my opinion. Additionally, Magic Eraser, which you basically have on all of these now, but that was originally a Google feature, a Pixel feature, and so that makes sense. Like Google's gonna roll out those features here first. Magic Queue is another big one added to the Pixel 10 Pro this year, and that is essentially giving you context suggestions for calendar, email, chats, just like a smarter way to use your whole phone. If you want to know more about that, check out my full review of the Pixel 10. I talk a lot more about it there. Of course, we have satellite SOS, and for some reason, other phones are not doing this yet, except Samsung kind of, and I'll explain the kind of in a second. And of course, this still has, I don't know why Google still has this on the 10. I didn't even realize they still have it. They have a thermometer on here again. So maybe that's useful if you're, I don't know, like grilling some food or using a cast iron pan, you want to know how hot it is. I don't know. If you've ever used it, let me know. I've been using Pixels for 2 years with that feature on there, maybe longer, and I've never used it except as like a fun little gimmick. But moving on to Samsung's features. Samsung has a lot on here. Of course, Samsung DeX, probably the biggest one. You can plug this into a monitor and have a full desktop experience. I've replaced my laptop with this exact phone for a week at a time, and it performs surprisingly well. You also do kind of have satellite SOS on here, but only if you have Verizon. So if you're in trouble and you don't have Verizon, that sucks. You should have either got Verizon or got a Pixel, I guess. You do have Bixby routines on here, which are pretty convenient. The whole Samsung ecosystem kind of ties in with Bixby routines there. It's a lot more expansive. So you've got like Galaxy tags, Galaxy watches, Samsung dishwashers and stuff, and those dishwashers and appliances definitely work well with the other phones. And sure, like Samsung watches work with these phones too, but there are exclusive features that Samsung likes to keep within their ecosystem with like the laptops and the Galaxy tags and stuff like that. We also get stacked widgets on the home screen. You have Morning Brief and the Now bar, which when they came out I thought was really cool, but it was a lot of, maybe I should say, empty promises there. It's a lot of like, every day it just tells you like the weather, which is nice. It tells you maybe how you slept, and then gives you a random news article and a playlist that's probably very unrelated to where you are or what is going on in your life. So, I mean, promise of AI, but it feels not very like AI. But they do have some other, again, maybe AI stuff on here. They've got like AI select, so you can, select things on your screen and do stuff like that. Kind of similar to circle to search, but some different functions on there. And of course, a lot of other Galaxy AI stuff that honestly, a lot of it doesn't really feel like AI. But they do have some call assistants on here that let you text to talk on the phone, so a lot like Google call screening, but possibly even a little bit better because you can choose what the replies actually are, which would be great for anybody in meetings, any deaf individuals, possibly anybody in need of assistance in a silent room. That's all great stuff you could do. You also have Good Lock, which is a huge library of customization you could do on Galaxy phones. And as I kind of mentioned before, SmartThings ties the whole Samsung ecosystem together. A lot of features on Samsung for sure. And then of course the OnePlus 15 faster wireless charging, Beacon Link, which is like a kind of cool way to use it as like a walkie-talkie essentially with other people in Bluetooth range of your phone. I haven't really used it, but I could see it being fun. You've got Zen mode on here, which actually locks your entire phone for 60 minutes or so if you want that, so you can focus on your work without any distractions. You've got the OnePlus Shelf with widgets. You've got Aqua Touch. You've got Glove mode. Both of those are really huge when you're trying to use this phone and your hands are wet, or if you're obviously wearing gloves. That's a great way to have this phone be more useful in the winter, for example. Unfortunately, no alert slider on here, but you still have that button. I'm going to call that a nice feature on the side. We've got an IR blaster on there. Bluetooth 6.0 on here, so even more future-proof. You're not really going to find any earbuds right now that have Bluetooth 6, but hey, if you're buying this phone and you're holding it for the long haul, then it's going to be nice when you have that feature in a couple years. I did mention that button on the side also could be used for like a AI, I think they call it mind space essentially. It's kind of like what Nothing was doing, where you can just use it to take a screenshot and then take a note and then search that a little bit later. But those are the 12 categories I wanted to compare these phones. And I'll show you, the total scores right now. You can add them up and a lower score is going to be better. Honestly, it's not what I expected. These phones are all really great phones and I don't think you'll be upset with any one of them, but leave a comment down below and let me know if you agree with my results and if you would have chosen, or which phone you would have chosen as your favorite phone. Thanks for watching. I'm Mike O'Brien and I'll see you in the next video.